All right, so we are going to talk about mindful reading strategies. So, have you ever read through whether it be a novel of your choosing or a chapter in a textbook or even a news article, and you have no idea what you just read? And sometimes you might have to go back through and reread it multiple times. So, that is partially just because your mind isn't engaged in the processing of the information. And sometimes that's okay, like for something that you're leisurely trying to read. But reading things at the college level is totally different. So, what we are going to work on today is learning about mindful reading strategies and what they're for, but also learning what these strategies are so you can use them. So, mindful reading strategies. Effective writing depends on deep, mindful reading. In college, you'll start to encounter longer and more complicated texts. These texts differ in many ways from what you've become familiar with as a student. These texts may use a different vocabulary, feature complex sentence structure, often present ideas and information in a way that appears distant or clinical, appear overwhelming to those not familiar with their discourse conventions. These new types of texts call for a different set of reading strategies, and it's called mindful reading. In fact, you'll see in college that different processes exist not only for writing, but also reading and processing information. Mindful reading is about adapting the way you process information in different situations. Reading mindfully helps you go beyond passive absorption of a text. Passive reading works well for things we read for pleasure, but it results in lower comprehension and less understanding of a text's purpose. Research and academic texts call for active engagement. And that's something that 100% needs to be said again. Research and academic texts call for active engagement. So, whether you are in a microbiology class and reading through a textbook, or if you are researching for Comp 1 or Comp 2, um, the it's not going to be a leisurely sit back, let's have fun and read this book kind of thing. Sometimes it might be for you, but oftentimes it won't. You will have to use these mindful reading strategies to be able to process the information, sort out the information that is necessary for you, but also how to analytically read and how to process it in a way so your brain absorbs it properly. So, mindful reading strategies. So, these are the strategies that you need to start to practice. Some of these they might already be things that you do, which is amazing, but these are all things that you just need to regularly get into the habit of utilizing as you read, whether it be in this class or another class. And the more you get used to it, the easier it will become, and then it will just become how you naturally read these types of texts. So the first thing is context. Think about what type of text or genre it is and why the text matters. Who is the author? Why did they write it? Who were they addressing? How does a topic affect others? Why are you reading it? What is your purpose, entertainment, assignment, curiosity, research? And what do you plan to do with the text? Next is schemas. A schema refers to a world view or overall orientation you have based on your prior knowledge and experiences. Your schema influences how you respond to a text. So in this, think about your prior observations, experiences, and readings. How can the current text connect to Connect to those by extending, challenging, or deepening what you already know. So with this, you might already have your own personal background. You might already have read something that somewhat pertains to this topic. And if you're reading at a college level, it might be, or likely is, building on and expanding on and deepening something that you already have that base knowledge of. So, how is it challenging you? How is it deepening these things? So, those are the kinds of things you need to be aware of. Pre-reading. It often helps to preview a text before diving in. This helps you identify what information it contains and its relevance. Examine the title, subtitle, abstract, and author. And if you don't know what an abstract is, it is basically just like a summary almost, slightly different, but basically it's a summary. So oftentimes in academic journals or any other academic writing, they will have an abstract that you can view to see what the basically overall topic of that particular piece is about. Or on another level, you can think about oftentimes when you get a book to read and you just flip it over on the back to see what it's about, it's basically an abstract. And the next point, skim through and look at section headings, any bold or italicized words, and also charts and graphs. Doing this helps create a mental framework for what this text is about. If you are doing a research paper and you have a book about, say, Abraham Lincoln, and you want to read the full book because you've got, say you have 8 other books that you need to have with information from. So does that mean you need to read 8 books in the few weeks that you have to research? Probably not. The best thing to do is definitely this sort of strategy where you are looking through, trying to figure out what information is where, so you can get an idea of where you specifically need to look and what information you need to pull out. Identify your role. You won't be the target audience of everything you read. Some articles address experts in other fields. However, you can still gather some useful information or perspectives from these sources. So just because you are not a microbiologist, but you're writing a paper and it has that sort of, has some kind of piece of information from a microbiology, text. Say you're researching something about COVID. There we go. That's relevant. So, you are writing a paper about it, and then you pull information, and one of the sources is some scholarly journal about microbiology. Okay, it is not written necessarily towards you if you don't have a background in science or microbiology at all, and you're just writing a, Comp 1 or Comp 2 level paper. So, and that's okay. But you are able to pull out information and get this more of a expert science perspective and be able to pull out the information that's necessary. Converse with the text. This is a metaphor for active reading and annotation. Think about your response, how you react to arguments and evidence, and how this reading can affect the way you think about the issue. Non-linear reading. Academic texts are designed to be read in both a linear and non-linear fashion. They multiply sections, some addressed to very specific readers and not others. Researchers often read the introduction, discussion, and conclusions of articles first. If you're not the target audience, you might not need to understand everything about methods or analysis. These sections are intended more for other researchers or skeptical readers. So you need to go through, it doesn't mean you need to read things from start to finish. Go through, read the things that, this just suggested. Researchers often read the intro, the discussion, and conclusions of the articles first. Pull what you can out of that. They will have more information in there for example, about methods or analysis, if you need those, but they might not pertain to you. So jump to where the things might apply to you first before you spend more time going elsewhere. Synthesis. Don't try to memorize, retain all the details of a text. Determine the main points, break down into smaller contributing claims. Identify the supporting evidence. Synthesizing text in this way helps you remember the key information and ideas, because that's what matters, right? The key information, the key ideas, the important things, the high level things. Paraphrase and summarize. Put the text into your own words succinctly. A summary contains a description of the overall text purpose and arguments. A summary can also include a paraphrase, a more detailed descriptions of individual claims and supporting evidence. Now, I want you to keep in mind that a paraphrase and a summary are very different things. So I like to use a movie example. If, say, you went to go see The Lion King, and I said, well, what's the summary of what The Lion King is about? Then you would say, well, it's about, you could say, well, it's basically Hamlet with cats, because that is accurate. It's based off of Hamlet. But you could say, it's about this dad lion, and he's killed by his brother so he could be king, but he tricks the little boy, the little cub, and makes him think that he was responsible for his dad dying, and he runs off, then comes back, and then he's trying to save their land. And so that's a summary. It takes a 90-minute movie, and you explain it in just a few sentences. But if I said to paraphrase The Lion King, you would literally have to go line by line of everything that is said and that happens and put it in your own words. So with a summary, you take something large and you make it very, very short. And with a paraphrase, you take something large and the paraphrase will be just about the same length. So they are vastly different. The next thing, new words. You may come across new words or familiar words being used in new contexts. Mark these new words by highlighting or circling them. If you have a digital reading, you can do this with digital tools like with Adobe. I'm also totally fine with you guys, if I give you an article or something, you print it off, and if you are more like you like the tactile things, you like to be able to do it with your hands, then just get a highlighter or a pen or whatever, and write the notes directly on the paper. Some people like that. I actually like that sometimes with a lot of things. And lastly, you may need to stop and look up words or mark them and move on. So I know I've had a lot of students that don't want to do this because I think it takes more time, but it is very helpful. It is key to your comprehension. If you don't know what the word means, then how do you know what the sentence is saying? Sometimes you can use context clues to figure things out, which is great. That is an awesome skill to have. But sometimes you're just like, oh, because that word kind of leaves a hole in the sentence, and you can't completely grasp what is being said. So just stop for a second. If you're on like an iPhone or something, you can just like click on the word and it'll give you the definition. Or you can just say, hey, Google or Siri or whatever, and what does blah, blah, blah mean? Or just Google it real fast. It takes you 5 seconds, way faster than, old school and looking it up in the dictionary. Says and does. Pay attention not just to what the author says, but what they do. For example, using statistics to support a point, driving home an argument with an example, explaining why an issue matters, critiquing existing research, and siding with one source against others. I think this is, they say that reading more makes you a better writer. And I think this is a prime example for you, especially starting off in collegiate level writing. So don't just think about, oh, well, what did whatever this author of this certain source I'm using say? Look at how they wrote it. Look at how they, use these statistics to, which is their evidence, to back up their claim. How did they put words together in a sentence that you thought was like, ooh, well, that was a really impactful sentence. Or maybe they wrote something in a way that made it stick with you. Look at maybe the phrases that they used. Look at how they explain how things matter. Look at how they critiqued and analyzed what was said, and how they use the different source information. So look at how, as an author, so on this side you're the reader, but look at how the author chose to write, and kind of make that, I wouldn't say necessarily mirror it, because you want to learn who you are as a writer, but maybe look at different strategies that they used that you found to be effective for you as a reader. Because if it's effective for you as a reader, and you saw how they used whatever phrases or whatever as an author, then that can kind of help you grow and see different techniques that help you as a writer, and that will help the reader of your pieces. Annotation. So if you're not familiar with annotation, it is actually super easy. But some people just don't like to do it because it, takes a little bit more time, but it really does help with comprehension. I am one of those that I need to highlight and underline things. And this is definitely an easy way to do it. And the cool thing with annotation, there isn't like a set in stone, this is 100% the right way to do this, this is 100% wrong. Now, you might have an instructor that has a certain way they want you to do it, for them to be able to see that you are working through and reading mindfully. But I am not that. I just want you to develop your own, I guess, kind of shorthand or key to help you process the information. So with annotating, this is what you do. So you take notes, highlight key information, record your thoughts while you're reading, underline parts you don't understand or you disagree with. This helps you process the key points. It also creates a map that makes second readings easier. So if you go through it the first time and then you mark those things, especially, if it's like a word that you didn't understand and then you had to stop and go look it up. Sometimes just that stop and then going to look it up. Sometimes it can kind of mess with your processing. So go back through and read it again. By seeing what you'd already highlighted is important. Seeing, okay, that was what that word was that I looked up and I know what it means now. It makes it much more fluid when you go through it a second time. And you also read it faster, so it won't take as long to do it. Outlining and mapping. Make a list of bullet points and headings to summarize a text key points and evidence. You can also create a mind web or chart to represent important information. By mapping a text, you're transcribing information from a textual to a visual mode, representing the argument in a way that may be easier and quicker to grasp its main points. So for some people, if you are more of a visual person and you prefer things in kind of like in picture or graph form, then this is really a good way to go. Some people like to do the mind web or the chart. I personally like the bullet points. If you see a lot of the things in our class, I will give them to you in bullet points. and outlines like that, and even your outlines that I'll have you guys do for your papers. That's easy for me to process the information, to have that hierarchy of, this is the topic, subtopic, blah, blah, blah. And in all honesty, uh, reading comprehension is something, even for me as an English teacher, that is difficult. Sometimes it's hard. I am admittedly super ADD, like clinically. So, being able to process the information, not get distracted. And then if I have to read something over and over, then I get frustrated. So if I'm actively engaged while I'm reading, then this makes a huge difference. The end goal. The summaries, outlines, notes, and annotations you create serve as their own forms of knowledge. You're interacting with text in a more meaningful way by utilizing these strategies. And this greatly enhances your comprehension, but also puts you in a better position to determine the meaning of these documents to you and to your own purposes. So these are the sources for this particular presentation. Your reading for this is on your list for this week. It is from You Should Be Writing. It is one of the open access textbooks that you guys have, and it's called Mindful Reading Strategies. All these strategies are taken from Ellen Carrillo's open access textbook, A Writer's Guide to Mindful Reading. And those links are active on here. So if this is something that you want to explore more about, I would definitely look at her book. It is open access as well. So that means you can just read it from where it is.